A mild recession towards the end of 2023.
Storm clouds of recession looming, and the storm is really coming.
The effects of the banking turmoil would likely lead to a mild recession later this year.
Are we at a turning point, headed for a recession?
Something huge is coming. Potentially a recession bigger than 2008 is about to hit the world. America's money supply is shrinking right now. This is a massive warning. Throughout the US history, whenever the money supply contracted, America faced recessions. Since the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, banks have stopped giving loans, which is an indicator of recession because American economy needs debt to continue growing. Bloomberg reported US bank lending has dropped by $105 billion in March alone. This is the biggest drop since 1973. The sharpest drops are recorded in real estate loans, commercial loans, and industrial loans. This is because of two main reasons. Number one, today, interest rates are almost as high as they were in 2008. Loans are not affordable anymore, so people are taking less loans.
The rate, Tyler, in other words, people don't want the loan because it's too expensive. They don't want the loan because demand may be weak.
And the second reason is that banks don't have much money left to lend out. Let's take the example of First Republic Bank in the year 2022. First Republic Bank's customer deposits were down by 35%, and their loans increased by 22%, which meant that they were loaning out more money than people were depositing. So to keep itself safe from collapsing, First Republic Bank started cutting back on loans to reduce the gap between loans and deposits. And this is happening not just at First Republic, but across all financial institutions. People are withdrawing their money out of bank accounts because right now, fears of bank run are looming all over. Because of this reason, these banks are cutting back on how many loans they give out, which means there are going to be fewer mortgages, business loans credit, and less overall money in the economy. Even though US government jumped in to bail out Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic Bank, and Signature Bank, but the problem is that bank runs at these banks have scared all of the other banks of US.
What's happening now could cause more banks to fail?
I mean, absolutely. You could see bigger banks get in trouble. You could see a run on all small regional banks, and that could put us right back to where we were with the financial crisis of '08.
None of the other banks want to be the next bank that has the bank run, so they are now being extra cautious. That's why they've made cutbacks on lending. Cracks are starting to appear in our financial system, and the most affected people will be the average middle-class workers.
The reality is that as prices are rising, the things that you have to pay for, the everyday expenses, your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, food, all of that is increasing and increasing dramatically in some cases.
Corporate debt is the foundation of US economy. Over the last 70 years, $20 trillion of debt has been added into business and corporate sector, which is fueling employment and economic growth. But if banks cut back lending more, the corporate debt will go down, which means business will have to lay off workers.
Now to that announcement from Google this morning. The tech giant planning to slash 12,000 jobs.
Microsoft says it is laying off at least 10,000 employees.
There's a new round of tech layoffs. Amazon will lay off 18,000 workers.
One of the first things the credit crunch affects is employment. Most of America's businesses run on debt. They take out loans to buy inventories and pay their employees. The minute these banks stop lending to these businesses, they're going to have to make some tough choices. One, they're going to have to lay off workers, or two, they're going to have to take out loans at really, really high interest rates. Or three, they're going to have to start withdrawing money from their bank accounts, which will ultimately cause bank runs, which would make the economy even worse. But whatever path they choose, the middle-class workers will be the first to suffer. If you look at the headlines, unemployment rate is at 3.5%, which suggests a healthy job market.
This recovery has been the fastest increase of people re-entering the workforce of any modern economic recovery.
So most of the people are tricked into thinking that the economy is doing just fine, but the reality is far different. If you look at the other indicators like retail and consumer spending, that has sharply declined over the last 12 months, and that is really, really bad for the American economy, since consumer spending makes up 70% of the US GDP. If more and more people continue to cut their spendings back to basics, the economy will only worsen. If you look at the numbers, about 1/3 of US small businesses couldn't afford to pay all their rent in April. 50% of employees are expecting layoffs, and the Federal Reserve is only a few weeks away from another interest rate hike, with more expected to follow later in 2022. When you look at Wall Street earnings reports, companies are losing money every single day, which means if these companies continue to lose money, they will soon start laying off workers. So the leading indicators of the economy are showing massive problems, which means that 3.5% unemployment rate is not going to last very long.
You know, the media is reluctant to call this a financial crisis. They keep saying it's a banking crisis. The financial crisis of 2008 was a banking crisis. Nobody wants to say what it is because they don't want to evoke memories and comparisons to 2008. But this is a sequel to 2008, and like all sequels, this one's going to be worse.
Not only Wall Street, but the real estate market is also under huge stress.
Things are changing. The people who are going out there and buying are finding they're overbidding. They're having a hard time getting their hands on the house. And right now, what everybody's afraid of is the high interest rates. But the minute those interest rates come down, all hell's going to break loose and prices are going to go through the roof.
To understand how the real estate market works, you have to understand that almost 58% Americans live paycheck to paycheck with less than $1,000 in savings. So if they get laid off, they won't have the money to afford their rents, and the ones that own homes won't be able to pay their mortgage, and, well, you can imagine the rest. America has kicked the can down the road for far too long. From 0% interest rates till 2008 to printing $7 trillion in last 3 years alone.
Just so you know, 40% of all the money ever printed in America was printed in the last 12 months. Let me say it one more time. Please listen. Please listen to what I just said. Nearly 40% of all the money ever printed in America was printed in the last 12 months, 15 months. 40%! And you know what's crazy? All this money they printed, let's give stimulus to this, to that person, to this person. You know what happened? No matter who they gave the money to, guess who the money flowed to? To the rich people. The rich got richer, not because they're bad people, because they were ready, because poor people don't know how to manage their money when it comes to them.
Every time America postponed the pain, the bubble just kept getting bigger and bigger. So one of two things can happen now. Either the feds and the US government find yet another way to kick the can down the road again, continue to print more money and let the bubble get even bigger, or they can let the chips fall where they may. The economy will be in for a bloodbath. And this bloodbath will only benefit the rich, like always, since they are already prepared to make riches off the recession. How do you think the US government will play this out? Share your opinion in the comments below.